Hi everyone, it's Kirk Giles here from Promise Keepers Canada, and we wanted to take just a few moments to reach out to those of you who are pastors and men's ministry leaders, men's group leaders all across the country, just to really encourage you during this time, just to let you know that we're thinking about you and praying for you. Your leadership is so critical, and maybe even more critical during these days than it has been in other parts during the year. And I know that there is a reality that your ministry likely looks different today than it normally would in a normal season of ministry. But I want to just affirm you and say, you are important and you are needed. The men in your church need you during this time. One of my great concerns right now is that in the midst of the chaos that we're facing in our society and culture, where men are at may be getting lost in the shuffle a little bit. There's every real possibility that just in the busyness of your own sphere, as you've tried to wrestle to the ground some of your own personal circumstances during this time, and even in your church, in the circumstances of your church and the tyranny of the urgent right now, all of those things are just reality that you are facing, and we recognize that. But we want to encourage you today to not lose sight of the men who are in your church community during these days. There's a very real possibility that your church may go 6 or 7 months before doing any formal organized activity again for the men. And yet that's just too long for men to go without having some spiritual input guiding and directing them to be able to live in this moment, not just live, but thrive as godly men in this moment in history that we are finding ourselves in. So we want to just share with you different ideas. Each week we're going to share with you a different idea of how do you help the men in your church during this season. And today I want to talk about the question of what do you do with men in your community or your church who are dealing with job loss? And I know that for many of you, you may not even know about some of the men in your church who have lost jobs. And maybe you do know of some. But here's one of the first practical things that you can do. If you're a men's ministry leader, get together a list of every guy who is in your church and take time to personally contact every man in your church over the next several weeks or even just this coming week. Call him, text him, email him, check in and ask this one question, what's going on right now that I can be praying for you about, and take time to pray for that man. Second, ask him, has any of this impacted your work at all, and how has it impacted your work? And then third, if you've got men who are dealing with job loss, then maybe you can start something within your church community that is a job board that will help men to connect with different work opportunities that might exist during this season. Encourage those men to just step back from the fear and the concerns they have for their family in the moment and walk with them practically towards different job opportunities, different assistance from the government, those kinds of resources, but also redirect these men to understand and remind themselves again of who their provider is, that their provider was never their employer. God has always been their provider, and he will not stop providing for their needs during these days. We have a couple of resources as a ministry that I think will be incredibly helpful for you during this time that you can just simply share with the men in your church. Our podcasts in the month of April are going to be talking about the area of finances and what do you do if suddenly your financial situation has changed. And we're also going to talk about work and how you work through all the emotions if you've just suffered job loss. And how you work well during this kind of a season if you still have a job. And so I want to encourage you to maybe just take our podcast. You can find them on any podcast platform or also on our website at promisekeepers.ca. They'll come out around the 1st and the 15th of April. Listen to them, share them with men in your church that could be encouraged from these podcasts and equipped from these podcasts. We also have another resource that's coming out this week, our This Is Me TV program, which is on our website at promisekeepers.ca, as well as on YouTube. There's a YouTube channel called This Is Me TV. We have a new episode coming out this week that tells the story of a man who was pursuing an NHL career, and because of a concussion and a whole other series of circumstances, all of his dreams, all of his goals, everything was cut short, and his whole direction of his life had to change. And we talk about, this guy talks about how he found his identity in God rather than in his dreams for life. And I know that men will be encouraged by this testimony to hear the story of another man who has gone through similar circumstances, what some of the men in your church are going through right now. So take those resources and share it with them. Hey, listen, if there are specific things that you are encountering that you just don't know how to help your men, please let us know. Just go to our website, promisekeepers.ca, go to the Contact Us section, fill out a form, tell us about what's going on so that we can find ways to be able to support you during these days. God bless you. We are praying for you that God would fill you with wisdom, and this would be an incredibly fruitful season in your ministry.